we're gonna have dinner at 6, so I can have, and she said, you have to cut your speech down. So instead of a 2-hour speech, I will make a 1-hour speech. Anyways, for some of you who are new to CACA, the Chinese American Citizens Alliance was started in San Francisco in 1895. It's the third oldest civil rights organization in the United States. The only two others that's ahead of us is the National Rifle Association and the National Association for the Hearing Impaired. I believe the NAACP was started 21 years after we started, and the JACA, which is the Japanese American Citizens League, which is the largest AAPI organization in the United States, was started about 15 years after we started. And the reason that CACA was started actually was a direct reaction to the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. And S and I had the fortune and honor to help recharter the lodge back on 12/13/14. And at that time, Susan Chinson was the executive director of the Chinese Historical Society of New England. And they actually presented us with a picture of CACA in Boston on Harrison Avenue from 1927 or 28. So the CACA chapter started in 1920 here in Boston, and we'll be celebrating our centennial in 5 years, so we have plans for that. And there was 3 important projects that CACA nationally have done, and I just want to give recognition to the things that we did. Back in 1943, when China and the US were allies in World War II against the Axis power, the Japanese, the Germans, and the Italians, the Chinese Exclusion Act was repealed on December 20th, 1943. And a lot of people credit Madam Chiang Kai-shek making the speech in front of the US House of Representatives. But the real reason that the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 was repealed in the middle of World War II was because the Japanese were using the Chinese Exclusion Act as a propaganda as they were trying to conquer all of Asia. Was that how can you guys trust the United States when they, in turn, the Japanese, but not the German and not the Italians, how can you trust to the Chinese, how can you trust the Americans when they give you the Chinese Exclusion Act? You can't become a citizen, you can't own land, you can't own property in the United States. So I think it was really President Roosevelt at the time, because it really makes sense not to have your ally, one of your 3-4 major allies, France, Britain, Russia, and one of them to be treated like not even a second-class citizen, more like nobody, basically, right? So I think that was the reason that it was appealed. But CACA actually was involved extensively in lobbying Congress to repeal the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1943. The other thing that we're very proud of was that we were also advocates of the Immigration and Nationalization Act of 1965. And that completely changed the dynamic of the United States. I'm sure some of us might not be here without the Nationalization Act of 1965. And one of the pins that President Johnson signed into law, there's a picture of President Johnson in New York City. The backdrop is the Statue of Liberty, and Johnson signing the Immigration and Nationalization Act of 1965. One of the pens that President Johnson used to sign that into law actually is at our CACA headquarters in San Francisco. So we were really honored and proud. And the first 3 presidents, Esther was the charter president, and Rose Hahn was the second president. I Chang is the 3rd president. So I have big high heels to fill. And so what do you do for 3rd act? So the repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act, the Immigration and Act of 1965, and of course, the Chinese American World War II Congressional Gold Medal, which was sponsored by CACA. And Esther and I spent 6 or 7 times going to DC, meeting with the members of Congress, and Mike Capianos was extremely helpful at the time. And we're really happy to share with you that of the 7 most active members of the group, of the 10, 12 most active members, 7 actually are CACA Boston Lodge members. And they include Major General William S. Chin, which most of you know. But we also have 3 other generals that are members of CACA Boston Lodge. We have Major General Robert Lee. We have Major General Dale Wong. So General Chin actually is the first 2-star general in the U.S. Army retired, and General Dale Wong actually is the first 2-star general in the U.S. Air Force retired, and we also have General Stephen Tong. So I believe we're the only Chinese organization that has 4 retired major generals in our midst. So you guys belong to a very distinguished group. So back when we chartered CAC in Boston, Michelle Wu, then City Council, was a member of one of our original 50 members, and Nina Lane was Esther's vice president. She was the vice president of CAC Boston Lodge, and obviously Nina became Quincy City Council, and now she's the president of the Quincy City Council. And Michelle Wu also became the president of the Boston City Council, and now she's the mayor. So for those of you who are aspiring to higher office, maybe CAC is a good place to be. And it brings a lot of people a lot of luck, you know. $30. So some of the members in LA, actually, most of the Chinese mayor elected officials in LA are members of the CAC Lodge in LA. And CAC Lodge in LA actually does endorse candidates. But because we here in Boston is a 501c3, we cannot endorse candidates, but obviously individually you can support whoever you want. But I believe the Congressman Judy Chu, Ted Lieu, a number of the high officials in the API community in California are actually members of the CAC Lodge. So some of our other members are also Lisa Wong, the former mayor of Fitchburg, and she was the town manager of Winchester. Neelan Chang, the former city council of Cambridge, was also one of our members. So I just want to share with you 2 activities that we're going to be doing in April. One is Qingming. Qingming is the Chinese tomb sweeping. And we intend to partner with the Chinese Historical Society of New England and visit the first Chinese American buried at the old burial ground over 200 years ago. And the second thing we're going to do in April is on April 18th, and this should be something familiar to Woody. April 18th this year is the 80th anniversary of the Doolittle raid on Tokyo. And I'm sure some of you guys saw the movie 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. And of the 80 pilots on that B-25 light bomber, medium-sized bomber, 1 landed in Russia. The remaining 15 crashed, and people, the members of the crew parachuted. And the Chinese civilian helped rescue 64 members of the Doolittle raid, including, at that time, Colonel Doolittle. 3 actually were executed by the Japanese army after they were captured because they said that they had bombed civilians, and I think 3 others were killed because they were doing the parachuting. But what is not known to 99.99999% of Americans is that over 250,000 Chinese civilians were butchered by the Japanese Imperial Army in retaliation for the bombing and in retaliation for the Chinese civilians rescuing the Doolittle Raiders. So 250,000 Chinese lives in return for 63 American lives. How many Americans really know that? I don't think anybody does. So we're planning to hold a memorial, visual memorial at the Chinatown Gate on Sunday, April 18th, to remember not just the brave service of our U.S. Army Air Corps, but also to the innocent lives lost. And this is not a protest against the Japanese people. We have the utmost respect and love for the Japanese people, but it's part of history that America needs to know. In this racially charged climate, I think it's so important that the general public knows about contributions of the African American, the Filipino American, the Korean American, Japanese American, and of course the Chinese American, the Vietnamese American. We're all contributed to the fabric, to the dynamic that is America. And that's what I hope to do in the coming years. And last but not least, I really want to build upon the great relationship that the Asian American community has with the African American community, with the Hispanic community, and more importantly, with the Native American community. Because the Native Americans actually are Asian Americans. They came across the Bering Strait. They came across the Alaskan land bridge. So the Native Americans are really our brothers, our cousins, you know. So we really need to work across racial line, because that's what makes this country great. regardless of all our fault, regardless of our history, this is the greatest country in the world because of the inclusiveness, because of great leaders that we have here, and because of you. Thank you very much. I look forward to your advice and support.